I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Alejandro Moreno, Director of the Department of Energy's Water Power Technology Office. As the Director for the Water Power Technologies Office in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, Director Moreno oversees efforts to develop and commercialize innovative technology and market solutions for clean domestic power generation from hydropower and marine energy resources across the United States. Working with the US Department of Energy's national laboratories, academia, and industry, the program funds research development and deployment of water power systems through a competitively selected cost-sharing projects with businesses, federal, state, and other stakeholder groups. Between stints at DOE, Director Moreno has served in the energy groups of the World Bank and International Finance Corporation, where he designed and led regulatory reform programs to spur investments in clean energy and rural electrification. We are very thrilled to have Director Moreno with us today. Without further ado, Director Alejandro Moreno.
Thank you, and thank you, Meryl, and the entire UMass Dartmouth team, both for inviting me and for putting on what looks like it's going to be a really tremendous few days or few hours, would have been days. And thank you again to the Governor, excuse me. I do want to say, I think probably the most exciting outcome or among the most exciting types of outcomes we could have imagined when we were first writing the Powering the Blue Economy report was seeing universities and programs like yours take the germ of what we developed and build out programs to actually develop the technologies around that common theme. And so it's really exciting to be here. And it's really exciting to see the work that you've done. And I look forward to following it over the next few years. For those that don't know me, again, as you heard, I'm Alejandro Moreno. I'm the Director of the Water Power Technologies Office at the Department of Energy. We're one of 11 technology offices within the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, along with wind, solar, buildings, et cetera. We're divided by technology type. We fund a lot of work. We're effectively a donor or a funding agency. Research and development and commercialization work from industry, universities, and national labs. You'll hear from a number of people who do work for us either on the lab side or industry or universities here today during the conference. Of course, you're going to get the really valuable information from them. What I'm going to take a few minutes to try to do is just take a step back and give you a sense of where I see the marine renewable energy industry today. And I guess one caveat there is our program doesn't deal with offshore wind. Those are our colleagues in the wind office. So I tend to use marine renewable energy synonymously with waves, tidal, in-stream hydrokinetic, and OTEC. But much of what I say will apply to offshore wind as well. And, of course, this is, given the transition that we're going through in administrations, this is the type of information that I plan to present to the new administration when they come in about our technologies. So, I think the good news is we're at a place of real opportunity for marine renewable energy. And, we've been there before. I think people would have said the same thing 10 or 15 years ago. And for wave and tidal power, it didn't pan out then the way that we were hoping. But for me, at least this time around, it feels more real and it feels more sustainable. And for a few different reasons. I think the first is from a technology perspective, we really are making progress. Between the large tidal arrays that are going in Europe, the deployment in the U.S., Verdant Power just went in the water in New York. ORPC has gone in the water with smaller tidal turbines in Alaska recently. And what we're seeing is these devices are working. They're still far more expensive than other renewable sources. But 10 years ago, you had blades being torn apart within a few hours of getting in the water. And you're not seeing that anymore. You're actually seeing a lot of the structural problems having been resolved. And now we really can focus on optimization and bringing down costs. And of course, it's been slower, but that's part of working in the water and part of what our program tries to help address. I mean, what I always say is if you're iterating a new technology on land, you put it in, you see if it works, you take it out, and you can repeat that process very quickly. Whereas in the ocean, it takes 2 years just to figure out one mistake. And if the mistake is a certain type of mistake, your whole system sinks and you got to build it from scratch again. And those are real challenges. And they really do explain why to me at least, a big reason that the marine energy industry has been slower to develop than other renewable energy technologies. The second real source of opportunity that I see, and this is exactly what you heard from Ram, is this sort of broader conception of value. Instead of just solely focusing on competing on levelized cost of energy, dollar per kilowatt hour against large-scale solar and large-scale wind, which is going to be very tough to do. When you work in the ocean, it's hard to compete against a modular terrestrial technology that doesn't have any of the balance of system challenges and costs. But the flip side to that is nobody else is working in the ocean. Marine renewable energy is the only technology there and is thus being custom designed to maximize the value for the big markets in the ocean, in the blue economy. And whether that is enabling new technologies at sea that can really lay the foundation for entirely new industries, as you heard the Lieutenant Governor talk about, whether it's aquaculture or enabling much deeper understanding, scientific understanding of the oceans that we have. I mean, there's a reason that sort of the cliche that we know the surface of the moon better than we know the undersea, and a big part of that is energy constraints. There's not a lot of data that you can take on one charge of a battery. By being able to develop persistent, affordable, sustainable sources of energy at sea for these types of applications, you have tremendous commercial and scientific opportunities that you can unlock. And also, lastly, being able to meet the needs and provide opportunities for remote communities for whom there aren't a lot of options right now, for whom diesel and with the high costs and really vulnerable supply chains is their primary source of energy. Many of these communities don't have wide access to a range of large-scale renewable technologies. And frankly, the scale doesn't really work either. You put a 20 megawatt wind turbine off a remote community in Alaska, there's no value there, right? Marine energy really is looking to be developed at a community scale, and there's a real market opportunity and an opportunity to provide value for the American people, which I think all of us that work in government at least are excited about. The last element is, as we look at applications for the grid, a real value and increasing recognition of the value of resource diversity. And specifically the contribution of resource diversity to resilience of a power system over time. Resilience is a bit of an overused word, but certainly if you have power systems that are entirely reliant or overwhelmingly reliant on a particular type of technology, particularly when that technology is variable in its generation, you see some obvious potential risk factors. And this is where both the predictability of tidal power and the near perfect predictability and the much sort of better forecastability of wave power and river hydrokinetic, in addition to the complementarity both diurnally and seasonally with solar and to an extent with onshore wind as well, really can serve large-scale marine renewable energy well. And these are values that don't show up in just the levelized cost of energy, but they're the type of value that is being recognized across the power system now, and the DOE, not just in our program, but really across the board. When we look at storage, for example, that we're trying to be able to quantify better and also be able to make sure it's better reflected in power system planning tools, in dispatch tools, in resource adequacy frameworks and metrics. These are all really important. And these are the areas where marine renewable energy's value is going to be seen and incorporated into the power system. And at this point, though, frankly, the competing technologies are less wind and solar and their batteries and other forms of storage and flexibility on the grid. So, I think what I see is put together, you see a fairly clear path forward and maybe even multiple different paths forward, which to me is stronger. That again, hits on the point of resilience from the perspective of an industry, from the value proposition, the business models, the supply chains. And so I'm excited. I'm very excited to see what we can do and where the industry goes. But I think we don't have a lot of time to demonstrate that. And now is really the time to show that this opportunity can be realized, that the technologies are ready to do what they've promised, and ready to progress in a way that is that shows that the engineering is improving, the cost is coming down, and some of the technical challenges are on their way to being addressed. And so to me, that means that we see the technologies that are in the water are working as advertised, and when they're not, that the next iteration of them is able to demonstrate a market and measurable improvement. The prototypes that are being tested in closed water systems are progressing through the TRL pipeline at a predictable and stable pace. The new designs are emerging, and new research is informing new designs based on new materials, new manufacturing techniques that allow potentially new archetypes that we haven't seen before. And really, that there's a strong pipeline of researchers in organizations like yours that are looking effectively to the new frontier of foundational materials and foundational science that can inform developers and inform the technologies and show really a long-term possibility for cost reduction and performance improvement over time. And of course, this is where DOE is, as any good government, we're here to help, right? We do have more money than we've ever had. We've got $109 million this year for marine energy specifically, again, not including offshore wind. Expect to have a similar amount next year if the House and Senate marks are hold. We just got our Senate marks yesterday. It was the same amount. And we're using that to support the industry in many different ways, including through big infrastructure investments like PacWave, which is the U.S. equivalent to EMEC, the first big offshore grid-connected test facility for wave power. Looking at similar project-based deployments for tidal power and river in-stream hydrokinetics, such as the ORPC project in Alaska I mentioned. We have our new TEAMR program, which is looking at supporting and really making the process very quick to get prototypes into tanks and flumes at the right stage and connect developers with the owners of that infrastructure in a very streamlined way. And of course, we have a lot of support to university and lab research. We're just in the last stages of a large funding opportunity announcement that went out specific to university and other non-lab research organizations. Without making any projections about specific funding opportunities in the future, I know that's the type of thing we would like to repeat and make a stable feature of the program if we have the funding to do it. And also, we have a lot of work that's supporting entrepreneurs, both in terms of company development and also user needs discovery, really understanding, particularly with the blue economy, what capabilities are we designing to. And so this brings me just to the note I'll leave everybody on, which is, again, my own personal perspective here, but what I think is absolutely essential for the industry to succeed in the next few years and really show the progress that merits continued investment. And the first is related to that, is showing that the technologies are really being developed in alignment with the needs of the end users, that it's not technologies that are being developed in a vacuum or because there's an archetype that had particular IP, but we're really listening, particularly in the blue economy, but in general, as we've recognized that we're not talking about electrons as a commodity anymore. Even for the grid scale, we're talking about grid services, flexibility capabilities, and in the blue economy, we're talking about a wide range of different uses where energy is an enabler, not the final objective. The second, then, is making sure university research and our own national lab research are directly connected to what the technology developers are looking at and where the biggest challenges are. We don't have time as an applied research agency to support science for the sake of because it's cool or for the sake of science. Science and engineering is going to be what solves the issues for marine energy, but they have to be targeted and they have to be well coordinated with industry and with other academic bodies that are doing this work. This is part of the reason that we are hopefully soon going to announce a selection for a network administrator, effectively, of university research that will help coordinate that research across all of the different bodies that are doing it across the country. And lastly, none of us know exactly what the new administration's energy priorities will be, but certainly we have some indications from what they've said and what we've seen on the transition team website. Certainly, both economic growth and climate change are going to be big parts of it, it looks like, which is a good sign for all renewable technologies. But if you read in depth, what you really see is a focus on jobs, a focus on community, a focus on people, and recognizing what energy technologies can do for the individuals in the communities that own them and that receive their services. And I think this plays to marine energy strengths really well. Again, it's community scale. We are focused on, in many cases, providing the last mile services or services on the other side of the grid to communities that don't have a lot of other options. And across the board, we are looking at the potential of revitalizing coastal communities, coastal infrastructure. The key to me is that stakeholders buy in, that the community stakeholders don't just see this as something they have to live with or deal with. And we don't see community stakeholders as a hurdle to be overcome, but rather as a key stakeholder who can take ownership in the technologies and the projects that we have and amplify our message and turn around and be proud that it's in their communities. I think that's the key to ultimately the industry moving forward and having success. So again, I really look forward to the rest of the show here. Delighted to have so many folks on my team take part. And again, look forward to hearing from all of you, any questions anybody has now, or everybody knows where to reach me. So thanks again for the opportunity and looking forward to the rest of the show.